want to welcome you all today to Leveraging Technology to Strengthen Relationships, Ease Anxiety, and Empower All Learners. We're so pleased today to have as our featured presenter, Stacy Roshan. She's an educator, first and foremost, from the top of her head to her toes. She's a favorite keynote speaker at conferences all around the country. She's done presentations with TED Ed, which is very exciting. She consults with both schools and districts and some vendor partners as well. And she's the author of a great book, Tech with Heart. We're going to give away copies for our people who registered. We're going to give away 5 copies of Stacy's book, and we'll let people know. We'll announce that. We'll announce to the winners by email in the next few days. One thing I've learned working with Stacy these last several months, I think, is the passion she has for discovering technology and sharing smart, strategic, and powerful ways to leverage that technology. She's all about not just results in the classroom, but compassion and giving every learner, each learner, the chance to express their ideas, but in ways that fit their learning styles. And you'll hear her talk about that today and how she equips teachers with ideas and tech tools that create really inclusive, equitable, empowering classrooms. Stacy's work has been featured in USA Today, the Washington Post, CNN, and the PBS NewsHour. And yes, like many of us listening today, Stacy has worked as a frontline teacher, math educator, director of innovation and educational technology for more than 15 years. So she's been there, she gets it, and she's here to share with you. And with that, Stacy, I am going to turn it over to you. I'm all ears and eyes.
Oh, thank you for the warmest introduction ever. I feel like I have a lot to live up to now in my presentation, but I'm just so genuinely excited to be here with you all today. And I know this is one of the busiest times of year. So thank you for those of you who are joining live. And I know people will be watching on the replay also. And thank you for just taking the time out to be with me. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I like to do is I like to make my presentations interactive in a way that feels like I would structure, a little bit of a lesson plan. And so I'm going to give you the option. You do not need to do this. If you just want to watch, that's fine. But if you are game to actually join in, I have created a Pear Deck, and there will be an interactive experience for us. What you can do is I just put the link in the chat. You can just click on that. It will ask you to sign in with Google. The reason for that is it's going to send you all the slides and all your responses right after the session ends. So you'll get all of that good stuff. If you are you want to just join from a phone, you can go to joinpd.com. Just go, in Safari or Chrome, joinpd.com, and then type in these 6-digit codes. So either click the link or go to joinpd.com and type in FJFUFG. You don't need any spaces. And I'll let people join that. And again, I know a lot of you might just want to watch. That's fine. But if you want to interact, and then you'll get that experience from the student lens, and I'll be able to kind of show how I use this tool in my classroom because it's a very important piece of what I do. Go ahead and join. So I see people joining. We have a lot of people on today, so I don't expect everybody to get on at all, but I'm going to just give a couple more moments for that to happen. And then I have the link is also in the chat if you just want to click on that. All right, so I see more people joining. I'm going to go ahead and press start lesson. If you have any questions about how to get on, drop it in the chat and somebody will help you out. Okay, so again, my name is Stacy Roshan, and if you want to connect with me, my favorite is Twitter, connecting on Twitter. I'm at BuddyXO, but I also have a website, techiemusings.com. I have all my contact information there, and I just want to emphasize that, if there's a follow-up question that you happen to have, I'm going to give some space in this presentation for that. but you can feel free to reach out to me, either a direct message on Twitter, or you'll find my contact information right on my website, and I do welcome that. So I'm going to start by talking about a little bit of my personal journey, because really the student that I was in the classroom has inspired the educator that I've become. And I want to share a little bit of that why with you. Then we'll talk about how EdTech can really empower all students to contribute to the conversation in a way that's most comfortable to them. And I'll share some of the tech tools that have been essential for me in finding those solutions. And then we will have time for some reflection at the end, and hopefully some Q&A time. All right, so let's do a little bit of a warm up. It's almost Thanksgiving. What's one kind or thoughtful thing someone did for you recently? Now, if you have some type of a pen tablet, you can, of course, draw on the slide. You can also use the tools, the text tools. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show, for those of you who decided that you didn't want to join the Pear Deck, again, that's totally fine. I'm going to show you what that student experience looks like. So if you were joined, it would look like this. And so you'll see that you have the pen tools, but you also have text tools. So let's use a combination of the two. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to circle. I'm going to use blue, and I'm going to use just a very thick dot. And I'm feeling very happy right now. So I'll just put my dot on happy. And then I'm going to use the text tools. And you can add in your thoughts here. So here's a way for students to just write, type, draw, whatever on the slide. And I use Pear Deck's drawing tool. I use this a lot. I'm going to share it a lot, but let's see how people are feeling. Okay, so I'm going to just show, go. All right. And I'm just going to scroll through this on the screen. You can look through some of what people are feeling. I'll make it big. I'm just going to scroll through them. I'm not going to read them all out loud, but you can see how real time this happens, right? And that's what I love about this. There isn't a submit key that students have to press first. You can see as students are typing, as they're thinking, as they're writing, it all comes in. Feeling happy and nervous at the same time. That could have been me writing that, but it wasn't. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. I love how some people are using multiple things that they're feeling too. That's great. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So I would love for you to quickly set an intention. Now, the reason I asked this question, clearly I practice yoga. I enjoy practicing yoga, and whenever I step on the mat and I'm doing an exercise, the instructor tells you to set an intention for your practice so that you can be mindful and you can reach whatever goals you have during that time. And so I like to ask this question for two reasons. One, it gives me information to know what you're looking for, but two, it also helps you focus your energy and your time that we're going to spend together today so that hopefully you can get out of this session what you're really looking for. So go ahead and take a moment to think about that. And I'm going to just show the responses. They're all anonymous so that I can read through them. And you can look up when you're done and see what other people are saying. I love starting class with a quick question, not this specific question all the time, but something like this, where I just get a little bit of a temperature check, see how students are doing, but also see what students need. And what I love about this is, back in the day, I had to have them write it on a piece of paper, and then I would collect the papers, but I really couldn't look at them until the next day, or act on that until the next class. And now it kind of all happens in real time, and this all comes in anonymously. I'm going to show you a little bit more about Pear Deck when I get to that part of the presentation and show you how I can see who's saying what. And I'll also explain the free versus the paid version of this tool. All right. So I see somebody asking, how do I get in? Let me go ahead and put the um, link in the chat again. And while I'm doing that, tell me, do you already have a tablet, a drawing tablet with a pen? I use a Wacom tablet. I'm going to share a little bit more about that today. Do you have something already? I think this tool is so important for teachers to have in their hands, especially as a math teacher. I don't know what I would do without it. I'm really lucky that I have a class set of Wacom tablets so that my students have the power too. But at least I want to show you the power from the teacher end to get started if you don't already have one. So I see mixed answers here. And I'll share, for those of you who said no, I'll share with you more about what I use and why. Okay, thank you for that information. I'm gonna go ahead and move on. So I couldn't do this presentation without referencing the Castle framework. So we'll reference it very briefly a couple times in my talk, because that really provides the foundation for applying evidence-based social emotional learning strategies to your teaching. And I really like to use research to inform, obviously, what I do. I'm sure many of you're like, yes, of course. Changes that I make in my practice, I try and look to the research and then obviously do what works for my students, my environment, my classroom, and that's where I adjust it. Now, if you're not familiar with the Castle framework already, I'm not going to go into depth in this presentation about that, but I do encourage you to check it out afterwards. You can just search it online, and this wheel that they have, you can click into it on each of the different competencies and it gives you more information. It also gives you examples within each of them. So it's a really, really great resource if you're not familiar with it already. And I do have a link in the slides that you can check out also. Again, if you have joined into the Pear Deck session, you're going to get all these slides right after the session emailed to you automatically. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that background. So a little bit about my personal story. I was very much that introverted perfectionist in the classroom, and I'm a processor. So I just need some time to think before I'm ready to necessarily speak up and share what's on my mind. Having to raise my hand in the classroom was never the best format for me. It actually caused me a lot of anxiety, and I sometimes felt like I wasn't able to contribute. I often felt that I wasn't able to contribute. And, when I became a teacher, I just wanted a better way. I wanted a better way to hear from all my students. I wanted to give them the time and space to think before having to be the first one to raise their hand and call something out. And that's where I've really turned to technology, and I found so many solutions in the technology for shifting my classroom away from that very first is best culture that I felt that I had growing up. So again, I've really been motivated to create this classroom environment that I felt I needed. And sometimes I feel like that's some of our best wins as teachers is, doing for our students what we wish that we had had. And it gives us this real lens of empathy. So the technology that we have readily available to us isn't something that I could have even dreamed of having when I was a student in school decades ago. And the tools themselves, they don't change anything or do anything magical, but the possibilities they create really are. And technology has just really transformed the way that I can interact with my students, how they can express themselves to me. And that's what I want to share with you today. So let me begin by helping you understand the transformative power technology had on my classroom. So it was my second year. I was teaching AP Calculus, and I realized that time was this major, major issue. I had all this content to get through, not enough time to get through it. And I had envisioned being this teacher who was going to walk around the room, get to my students every day on an individual level. I was teaching at an independent school. I had smaller class sizes, so I knew that I was in the optimal environment for that. But still, at the end of like this 45-minute block that we had at that time, I felt like I had just jumped off this treadmill that was going at full speed for 45 minutes. And there was this level of anxiety and stress in my classroom. And that was exactly the opposite of what I was seeking to create. And so, much of my problem was just the pace of the AP course, the amount of time that that lecture took, and the difficulty of those homework problems that I was sending my students home to do. And, I said to myself, how was I going to have time to individualize, to personalize, to be there for my students when they needed me the most? And of course, that nervous energy that I was feeling from my students was trickling off to me. And so it was wearing on me too, both physically and mentally. And I had so many students coming in after school. And I love when students come in after school, of course, but I felt like they shouldn't have to come in after school to get those follow-up questions answered. I wanted to open up time and space in the classroom for those conversations to happen and for those questions to get addressed. So my main goal was really to create this classroom environment that was more calm and this inspiring atmosphere that I had envisioned in becoming a teacher. And so that was a spark for me. That was when I turned to technology and I learned about screencasting. And that simple thing I learned about screencasting, I decided to what's now called as a flipped classroom. It wasn't a thing then, but I essentially flipped my classroom. I started assigning videos to students to watch ahead of time, and then I could open up the classroom space for conversations, for discussions. And I thought by doing that I was going to be like running around the room, but in a very great way, right? Running around the room and answering all these questions because that's what I had before I flipped my classroom. But what I found was the most pleasant side effect, which is actually the biggest win for my flipped classroom of all, was that when I reduced that anxiety in the classroom and I opened up this time for students to collaboratively problem solve together, they wanted to ask their peers questions. They didn't feel as reliant on me. And that was just because I had opened up enough time for that. The year prior, if there was 10 minutes to do work, they were going to ask me because they knew that the time was ticking, that they only had so much time. They knew I was the expert. But when I gave them all this time to work, things could really shift. So that is one thing that was a huge shift. And the other thing is that by using technology, I was able to get a sense of what students needed before they even walked into the classroom. And by, pre-assigning the video, assigning some questions in the video, I was able to get all this information and really shift my focus from just like the content driving my lesson to, I was able to offload that lesson to video. I was able to get like that very teacher directed portion of class to video. So I could really focus in class on how I can best address the questions that students were actually struggling with and coming to class with. So if you're interested in the flipped classroom, I don't want to talk all day about the flipped classroom, but I do have a video. You can click on this video later, and this is really my philosophy around the flipped classroom model if you want to explore that later. But this has been a big piece for me. Now, the first step in my flipped classroom journey was obviously to create the videos themselves. And it took me several years actually to find the perfect pairing of tools for my workflow. And, it can be really frustrating when you have all the right ideas and the motivation to innovate, but then you don't have the right tools in your hands. So I want to just, of course, share a little bit more about what I learned. I'm a Mac user myself. And when I learned about Wacom tablets, that was a real game changer for me because I could use the device that I had, which was a Mac, and then I could just plug in this Wacom tablet to get that handwriting ability on my Mac. I could use the same programs, the same software that I was already used to and already using, and have that full computer experience while having the pen in my hand. So I'm going to share right now a little bit more about the different tools. I'm not going to go into big detail about my setup, but if you're interested in that, I have a video about my setup and how I make my videos. Again, you can click on that. I want to empower you with the resources that you might need today, but I have a lot of information to share. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to jump into which of the Wacom tablets that I recommend, because I saw some of you asking questions and saying you wanted to purchase one, and maybe that's why you came today. But then after we go through that, I'm really going to just get into how I set up class for engagement. So I'm going to I pre-recorded this next portion so that I could show you all the different Wacom offerings so that you could see that. It's a couple of minutes. And then after that, we're going to dive into really how I utilize this in the classroom and how this has been a really big piece of getting to that relationship aspect. All right. So I have a couple of different ones that I'm going to show today. So first of all, this one right here is the pen tablet style. And so you can see here, it is like a giant mouse pad. That's how it works. The pen just gives you pen precision to write. If you can draw with your mouse currently in an application, then the Wacom tablet's going to give you the pen precision when you're writing. It's not going to magically put a pen on your screen. You need to pair it with an application that has a drawing tool built in, and then you have the pen precision of being able to write instead of, trying to scroll along with your mouse. If you've ever tried that before, it's not fun, especially me as a math teacher. I'm trying to write some of these calculus equations. No, I cannot do that with a mouse alone. So I need one of these, and then I've got the pen, and I can just write. So this is a slate style, very easy to carry around. This one that I'm showing right here is the Wacom Intuos tablet. This is the small size right here, and it is Bluetooth enabled. There are two versions of it. If you want something portable to carry around the classroom, this one, the Bluetooth version of it, is definitely my recommendation there for its portability, easy to throw in your bag, carry it around if you have different classrooms. Now there is also a larger size. So these are the two sizes of the Wacom Intuos tablet. This is the small size and this is the medium size. And this also comes in a Bluetooth version. So you can choose between those two. The small size is obviously a little bit lighter, easier to carry around the room. So this one is usually what I recommend. Now there's also the one by Wacom, and I have it unplugged right now, but this one does need to be plugged in. This is their lowest price point option. It's the one with the red back, and this one is absolutely fantastic. All of Wacom tablets are absolutely fantastic. They're created for artists. They're well beyond what I ever even need as a math teacher, but the handwriting experience on them just feels so good. And when it feels good, you want to create more. It looks better. You're more excited about your work. And for me, it's been something where I've created more because I have these tools in my hand. So this one is the one by Wacom again. If you're able to get like a class set of these, you're able to put it in a student hand. This is absolutely my recommendation for students because they don't need wireless. If I have a class set of these, and I do actually have a class set of Wacom tablets, I want the plugged in version. Bluetooth would be a lot for me to manage. And again, the price point on this is a little bit lower. So this is what I would recommend for students. Now, the Wacom One is the one that you see right there on the screen. That's the display style tablet. I'm going to move over to that in just a moment. But that is the one that I use to create all of my flipped classroom lessons. You do need to be plugged in for that one. You need to be plugged into the wall and you need to be plugged into your computer. So that's the one that when I'm sitting down, I'm writing with. And I love that it gives me another screen. If you need to teach virtually at any point, you have a second display, which is super key and really helpful. So those are the three options that I usually recommend to teachers. Now, let me hop over to a quick overhead shot of me drawing on the Wacom One tablet. So here you can see that I have a whole nother display. It is a bright, wonderful display. I'm just using Canva here actually, and using the drawing tools that are built into Canva to mark up a worksheet, record a video. You can do so many things with this. The writing experience on the Wacom One is really pleasant. It feels very much like you're actually drawing on paper, which is really nice. It's not too glassy like you might have experienced on other tablets. And so to me, this is the ideal tablet. I use it for my lesson planning. I use it for my note taking. I use it for journaling, for planning, and obviously for creating my lessons and also for in-class instruction. Just keep in mind that it does need to be plugged in. So when you're thinking about these three different options, you just really want to think about what's most important to you, what your priority for using this tablet is going to be. Hopefully this information will help you decide. All right. So, the next thing that I want to get into, hopefully that background was helpful, is, creating the videos and assigning them was really just the first step. And as I researched further into EdTech tools, I started discovering ways to really take that level of personalization to the next level. So one key thing has been Edpuzzle for me. And Edpuzzle is a tool that allows me to embed questions into the video. So it actually pauses the video, asks the students to respond to a question. If they get it right or wrong for a multiple choice, it gives them instant feedback. They can rewind the video to rewatch that portion, which many of my students do. We kind of work our way up to getting there, of course. And then also I can ask short answer questions, which I really appreciate the short answer questions too. Those are the bigger picture questions, or even just like a check-in with the student. And those are the things that I then follow up the next day with in class. So normally I would start the next day class with, if there were any common questions that students missed as a whole, as a class, I would go over those. Any of the short answer questions, of course, we're going to review as a class, and that, kind of sparked their thinking the night before, so that the students who are processors had more time to think, and now we can have a full conversation about it in class. And then also, the ability for them to just get that instant feedback is really, really huge for them, and forces them to think a little bit more critically and get a better sense of awareness of where they might be struggling or not. And so that, of course, I think ties back into the Castles framework. If we go back here to like that self-awareness competency, I think there's some connection here. And I'm going to move on from this because we only have a short time together, but I just want to bring it back up as it's very important to me in kind of creating the lens behind why this is so important to talk about. So as I flipped my classroom and I began having these more like robust and dynamic conversations in the classroom, something that was still bugging me was, how could I have every student really contribute? Me as a student, I was that one who didn't want to raise my hand in class, or just didn't feel like I had that answer on the spot. And, the quickest person to respond, a lot of times I started to confuse that with being better. And so I start my book actually with saying that some of our smartest students might be our quietest. How do we give them the opportunity to be vocal in classroom discussion without calling them out or making them feel uncomfortable? Some of our unsung superstars may need time to think about their answer before speaking up. How do we shift from a culture of calling on and praising the student who raises their hand first? How do we shift from this first is best culture to one that sends a message that everyone's voice matters and that everyone has the potential to excel in the classroom? So much of the world around us, whether it be in the classroom, in meetings, as adults, individuals raise their hand to contribute, are cold called on to respond, and those who regularly speak up, they earn positive reinforcement for contributing, and in the classroom, they might get actual points assigned for this type of participation. And leaders might even mistakenly assume that they're having this truly robust and dynamic conversation because we have these couple of hand raisers. And it's just very easy to confuse that. Too often, we give weight to the ideas of those who are most vocal and quick to have something to add. And I believe that by talking about this reality and discussing strategies to empower all voices, we can make a real shift here. One of my big inspirations has been Susan Cain. She, of course, in her book, Quiet, and she also wrote Quiet Power, she talks about many of these ideas, and she helped me understand myself and accept myself better also. But this quote in particular, which I read a couple of years ago, really helped me motivate me to make some changes. And also because she does research, it helped me make those changes in my classroom and feel more confident and comfortable making some of those shifts. So you can read this quote if you would like to, but it talks a little bit more about that extrovert ideal, and that, that isn't necessarily what we should all be looking for. It's not the best. Yeah. So if you are interested in more about Susan Cain, she actually has on her website some tools. If you go to quietrev.com, she has resources for schools specifically on her website. So you might be interested in checking that out. And again, it's given me a huge self-awareness, but also an awareness of things that I want to do in my classroom. So let me ask a quick question. What does empowering student voice mean to you? I'll give you a moment to respond to that, and I'll take a look at the chat too if things are coming in there. Thanks for those of you who are sharing in the chat also. Love seeing that. Here we can see what other people are saying about what empowering student voice means to them. I love that you bring up agency, students with disabilities, and everybody has their own learning style, learning needs. How do we provide these platforms without calling any individual student out and just giving everybody access to these things? It's like on meetings now, there's just more awareness about even providing closed captioning for everybody, which is helpful to everybody. Some people really need it in order to be able to even view it or listen, but it is helpful to so many beyond that. Wow, there's so many great answers here. I hope you're able to look up and see some of these. Yeah, confidence is really, really a big one for me too, especially as a math teacher. You have a lot of students who have real math anxiety, which I believe is a real thing. And by helping them build their confidence, and I really utilize these tools to understand them, to allow them to ask questions in a way that feels safer and better to them, I feel like I can make a real shift in their learning. Thank you for all of these great answers. I'm going to go ahead and move on. How familiar are you with Flip, which used to be called Flipgrid? Now it's called Flip. I just want to ask you that before I move on. Okay, so I see some people saying, what is Flip? So what Flip is, I like to think of it as like a video discussion platform. So like you would have a discussion forum, maybe on your learning management system. This one is all through video, and it can be threaded video. So it can really be a discussion. I'm going to share a little bit about how I use it myself, but just think of it as like a video discussion platform. But students create the videos all on, there's a web, they can do it on the web, and there's also a mobile app. And so it's not like they have to make a video, upload a video. There's none of that passing back and forth of video files. It all just happens seamlessly, and it all displays in this grid like this. So you can see all the different responses in the grid. You can make them private if you don't want students to see one another's, which sometimes I do for specific things. But a lot of times I just want this for peer-to-peer learning and, for everybody to learn from one another. So what I love about this is I'm using technology that students, like I say they have it in their pockets, because what I do is I usually have them use their phone, and then they just hover their phone over their piece of paper and explain their math thinking. That's it. It's super simple. Hover your phone over your piece of paper and explain to me how you were thinking through this problem, so that I get tremendous, first of all, insight into how students are thinking about problems, how they're thinking through it. It's so much. I mean, I can't get that information when I just see their final work. But also students get unmatched practice in verbalizing their thinking process, which helps them understand it better. Also makes them more aware of any gaps that they might have, because they might be fumbling at a certain point, and that's because they didn't understand it well enough. And lastly, it really fosters this peer-to-peer learning culture when I do these group activities, because students can learn from one another. They learn from each other's videos, and that's very powerful. And sometimes students just have this lens, this empathy that we can't replicate as teachers, because we're experts by that point. Students know what their classmates are going through in that moment, and so they can explain it in a different way, which is very powerful too. So, it's not just about math. I just wanted to show this quick little example here. So here is in a, you can use it for discussion. So you can see how it's a threaded discussion forum. So you can offload some of your presentations maybe to have students record them on a flip video. And then they can, add in any interactive elements that they're really into. Of course, you don't want students always making video presentations. Them coming up to the front of the room and presenting is important, even if it does make them nervous. It's a skill that we need to teach them. But how do we see how every student might be able to creatively express themselves? How do we provide multiple platforms? How do we just shift the dynamic sometimes of how we're doing things, or what the more traditional way of doing things may have been? And so here is where I think you have a really powerful solution. As I was saying before, that peer-to-peer learning culture. So in my AP Calculus class in particular, because you get to the end of the year and you have to do these, you're studying for the AP exam, and there's these free response question types that are 6 different questions, A, B, C, D, and everybody has those same questions to do. And so, all different schools from all over are practicing the same thing as the test approaches. And what I've been able to do is I've been able to collaborate with actually classrooms outside of my own, teachers outside of my own, and just say like, hey, let's do the, what was this? This was the 2016 AP free response question bank that we were doing. And I found another teacher who was assigning that to their students. We assigned it on the same day. And we said, okay, go to this topic. And if nobody's responded yet, you put 1A up, and then the next person would go in there, they would see 1A, they would watch 1A, and then they would do 1B of the problem and explain their solution, so that we solved this whole problem set collaboratively together. But it forced students to watch the way somebody else would have done it, and then they added on to this, and so they were able to learn. And it was really powerful to do it with outside of our school, because first of all, towards that springtime, we had senioritis setting in, all this stuff. So it gave that authentic audience, and it gave some accountability for the students. But also they could see, like math is a universal language. We are all talking the same way, but maybe they explain it a little differently because their teacher explains it a little differently. And that was very interesting and fun to see too. So, there's just a lot of fun, and there's so many applications. I know some of my, with some of the lower school teachers that I work with, they've set up collaborations where they read the same book with another school, and they just all add to the grid, and they share their experiences. They really learn from one another. They get the sense of empathy too. And I think it ties back to some relationship skills, going back to those Castle competencies. All right. So let's move on to another tool that I really rely heavily on, which is Pear Deck, which of course you are already in. You're seeing that as I present my slides today. And one of the really big things that I have to share is that when we don't hear from all voices, it's not just the student who didn't get to contribute, who might feel bad, or you didn't think was participating, or whose ideas we didn't get to hear. It's that everybody loses when we don't hear from all voices, right? We don't showcase the diversity of thought and perspective in the room, and the variety of ways to approach a problem, to solve a problem. And so, like one of my things that I just hope that will be lingering in your head after this presentation is like, imagine if we creatively were able to leverage these tech tools to shift away from this culture of consistently praising the loudest voices in the room and the first to raise their hand, and one towards one where every person has a platform to make their ideas seen and heard. And that's really the solution that I found in Pear Deck. That was my question to myself, and I found a lot of solution in Pear Deck. So how many of you are familiar with Pear Deck, by the way? Obviously, you're using it right now, but have you used it before? All right. So for those of you who are like, what is Pear Deck? It's an add-on for your Google Slides. You can also actually use it with PowerPoint. If you use PowerPoint online, or if you're a Microsoft school, you can use it with that, but I use Google everything. So that's how I use it. So all you do is in your presentation, you created your presentation already. You just use this add-on, and then I can just show it to you right here. So it's right here on the sidebar. So you just go to your extensions, you add it. Now it's free, but there's limitations. So what I mean by that is you'll see that I've asked them like a multiple choice question type, that's free. The text question type, that's free. But the draggable slide type and the drawing, those are paid features. In addition, I was saying to you before that, I could see student names attached. That is a paid feature. So if I open this dashboard in another view, that would give me the names attached. That is a paid feature. So, and then I'm going to close the session today after we finish, and that's going to share all the slides with you. You're going to get all the slides with all your responses. It will be emailed to you, and that's also a paid feature. But there's a lot you can do with just the free feature. If you're interested in a premium feature, I actually have a code, a 90-day trial if you're interested in that. But this is really what I rely on in my classroom. So the first view is the student view. From the student end, this is the student end. If it's just a slide with no questions, it looks the same. But if there's a question, then it looks a little bit different. So when we were on the question slide, this is what it looked like on the student end. They saw the multiple choice answers. So, all right, so we have the student view, then we have the projector view. That's what you're seeing on your screen share right now. That's what you've been seeing me present on. And that third view is the paid feature. And that's where if I opened this up, I would see names attached. So the projector view is of course anonymous so that all students feel safe in sharing what's on their mind. Now, how do I actually do things in my classroom? So as a math teacher, this is kind of the flow for me. I ask a lot of questions that are drawing question types. And then again, I told you I'm very lucky. I have this class set of Wacom tablets, and my students plug that into the computers they are already bringing to class. So it's one class set. I use them for all different classes. And then they already have the laptop that they're bringing. And then they can just draw their answer. And I do this for warm up, just a couple of questions. So there's a couple of things that are powerful about this. One, I can see how students are thinking. In real time, I see what they're writing, how they're writing it. And that really helps me understand where they're getting stuck on problems. If they're having problems getting started, if they're having problems at the end, I get insight into all of that. As well, when I project the answers on the board, it's anonymous, and I can really call out mistakes without calling an individual student out. There is so much power in talking about the incorrect answers and actually showing those incorrect answers on the board. I talk about them, and the class can analyze why this mistake was made, because helping a person get unstuck or helping yourself get unstuck is the most powerful thing that you can possibly do. And so I'm really able to do all of that through this. And instead of just like writing the answer on the board myself, which is what I did before I had this, right? Like ask students, what step would I do next? But it's still my handwriting, my work. I'm able to really put students' work up on the board, and then we talk about those answers as a class and we discuss it. So that's been super powerful for me. So we're getting into the end of the presentation. Again, I just think that we can leverage technology to create more inclusive, equitable, and empowering classrooms for all of our learners, but giving them a variety of ways to express their ideas, their thoughts, and really allowing them to open up to us by making them feel a little bit safer in how they are interacting with us, and also just making it this environment where everybody in the classroom is required to share what's on their mind, right? So making it more interactive for all. I don't want to confuse this with, like students hiding behind their laptop, typing their thoughts, because I really think that it is about, again, this safe space. And also what I found is that some students type a lot in the Pear Deck or draw a lot in the Pear Deck. And then we bring it to the board for conversation. And those students who might not have typed so much, all of a sudden they're raising their hand, and that's where their voice really shines, right? Because they're just more oral. They think while they're talking. But I also find that sometimes just giving students that opportunity to draw first, to write first, giving them that space, then when we do it orally, they're more ready to contribute because they had that think time in advance. And thirdly, I find that sometimes because I projected a certain student's work, all of a sudden they start talking about that because they're like proud of it. They want to share more about what they were thinking and why they put that response up there. I didn't have to call them out. They are volunteering to contribute, but I help them. And I found that students really build their confidence in some of their more oral speaking skills by creating these multiple platforms for them to share. So we're getting to the end, and I want to leave enough time for questions. So I'm going to actually not share that slide. But what I will share here is that, Pear Deck isn't just for if I know a lot of you are probably like, oh, you have this class set. That's amazing. I don't have that. But what you can do, if you can get the tablet in your hand, so like say that you have the wireless, like this is how small it is, the Wacom Intuo small tablet. So say you have this in your hand. What you can do is you can create some of these Pear Deck slides that are more instructional slides. This is actually what I do too. I create some that are more instructional, and then I log in as a student and a teacher. You'll see I have two different tabs open. So go over to the teacher tab, the student tab, and I would tell students if they want to draw, they can. If they want to write, they can. But really, this is an instructional slide. I'm just going to write on this. So I use my tablet, and I would draw out. I would ask students, what are you thinking? And I would draw it here. The reason that I draw it here instead of just writing it on the board, because writing it on the board isn't going to be permanent in the way that when I publish these takeaways at the end of class, this is actually something that I've written on these slides that you see here. Publishing the takeaways basically sends a Google Doc to everybody who's done it. Now, if I fill out the Pear Deck like a student's filling it out, then I get a copy of my solutions, and then I can post that to my class page if somebody's absent, if a student requires guided notes. Some students have an accommodation where I have to provide notes. Now I'm able to give them those notes without really, doing anything extra there. And we were talking before about, certain student might have accommodation and need that, but I think every student benefits from being able to access the notes that I took and the way that I took them for reference later. So that's been a big thing of the piece of the way that I structure it. So some of these are slides that are interactive where I want students like a warm up and a closing, but in the middle, I actually do a lot of instructional slides where I don't ask students questions in every slide, because that would also wear them out. Like, you don't want to ask too many questions either. There's a sweet spot in between, right? So we're going to get into some questions very soon. Is there anything you need immediately? I know you've been using the chat too. We're going to get into the Q&A in a minute, but if you want to ask something anonymously, I'm giving you some space to ask anonymously right now. Oh, thank you. I'm going to give a couple more. I'm going to give at least another minute for you to ask questions here. Actually, I will share that there's also this great little timer right here. If you hold down the lock screen and you put on a timer for a minute, I love doing that because sometimes it's very tempting to move too quickly, right? I want to make sure I give everybody enough time to write something, to have that think time, for me to be quiet, give my students that time. I often use the timer for that. Oh, I love that you shared that you're using Pear Deck with K-5 too, because I always share high school examples, and I know that people who teach the younger ones are like, can I do this too? Pear Deck. So Pear Deck is a tool that we actually have a school subscription for at my school. So it's not each person. I think it's $150 for an individual teacher though. And then when you have it, all your students are able to access it. So you would only need one teacher license. All right, let's see if we have any other big questions here. So at this point, it locks people's screens. You can just see what this looks like, so that, that's a great way to call attention back to the board, but I can unlock them easily. Oh, do I have resources to host a book club with my book? I actually do on my website. If you go to techiemusings.com, I have discussion questions on there, and you can also follow up with me afterwards and let me know what you're leading, and I would be happy to share ideas or brainstorm with you. So please definitely reach out to me. Can this be done on Chromebooks? Absolutely. All this works with Chromebooks. Even the Wacom tablets actually work with Chromebooks, but Pear Deck works great with Chrome and Chromebooks, and students can draw it with their finger, especially if you have the littler ones. What other devices can students use with Pear Deck? Pear Deck works on any device using a Chrome browser. So sometimes people using iPads have trouble using Pear Deck, and my advice is always move over to Chrome, because a lot of people are using Safari on an iPad and then it doesn't work as well. All right. Oh, we just got devices for my students this year. Yes, love it. All right, I hope I got to everything. All right, we're going to get into Q&A soon, but I wanted to give you a space to ask some questions anonymously too. Now, we're going to get into some reflection. I want to share a couple of things. I'm going to move you right now into what's called student pace mode if you are in the Pear Deck. So now you have the ability to move through the slides at your own pace. Before I was controlling it. Now you are going to press the arrow to move through. If you're interested, I had this amazing opportunity to do this TED Ed Educator Talk, and it talks a little bit more about some of the tools that I use. It talks about Pear Deck, it talks about Flip, but just a little bit more examples you'll be able to see there. If you're interested, it is a 10-minute video. Again, just like a lasting thought of when we give our learners the right platforms to express their ideas and integrate tools that allow them to respond in a way that is most comfortable to them, we allow each student's most powerful voice to shine. And, to me, it's really about creating this more compassionate classroom environment. I know that that tech integration has made me a more compassionate teacher, but it does start with intentional integration of that technology into the design of our lessons. Like, it's all about the lesson design. To me, the tool is only a tool until it's actually part of what you're doing in your classroom. Now, I have some reflection questions. If you want to do them, I'm going to leave them open for a little bit so you can write out your thoughts about if our time together sparked an idea, did it bring up questions? If you ask anything in here, I will follow up with you afterwards, after this session closes. Also, if you want to, bonus challenge, if you want to explore Flip, if you haven't used Flip before and you want to try it from the student lens first, and you want to reflect on some of our time, I have a little Flip topic right here. So all you would do is you would join with, your Google account or your Microsoft account. And then once you're there, you're going to be able to just add a response and you can add your video. So there's 2 videos here from another presentation that I did. But you can just add one and I'll respond to any videos that come in here. Totally optional. I just wanted to give you something to play with and to experiment with if you wanted to. And then here's where, if you wanted to try Pear Deck, I have a 90-day trial code that you can see. You can learn more about Edpuzzle, what they're doing, more about Flip, and then more about what Wacom's doing in education. They have this wonderful blog posts that come out regularly. You can click on that link and see what Wacom's doing in education specifically. And then just art credit for my slides to Michael Summers, is the artist behind the cover of my book. And I also obviously used his artwork to inspire the background on some of my slides. And that's really it. Time for discussion. At the end of these slides, I have some tutorials. If you're interested, I have a lot of Wacom tutorials, Edpuzzle tutorials, Pear Deck tutorials, and Flip tutorials. And they're all at the end if you're interested. Just give you a lot of resources there. But let me stop talking and let's get into some questions.
Hey, Stacy, that was just terrific. Really wonderful. And we do have a few questions in, and I want to encourage folks while we have just a few minutes left. Be sure you post your questions either in the chat or use the question mark at the top. Just curious, can you offer just a few more tips for adapting some of the tactics and strategies from today for lower grades, middle school, elementary grades? Any ideas for ways for teachers to start using some of the techniques?
Yeah, so I actually work with teachers K through 12, and my school that I've been at was a K through 12 independent school. And these tools are tools that we use K through 12. So the hardest part about some of the tools for the littler ones, to be quite honest, is just they have to log in with their Google or their Microsoft account. Getting them signed in is probably the hardest part of it. Once you get there, it's quite easy to use. So, with the younger kids and Pear Deck, for example, we use a lot of the just drawing slides and allow students to just doodle. Even if they have Chromebooks and touchscreen Chromebooks, they can doodle with their finger. That's enough for them. And then, they do a little bit of the typing too, but just some simple things with Pear Deck, and you can just do multiple choice too. You can do things with draggable slides, which are really good with the younger kids. I didn't have any of the draggables in this presentation, but you can just drag a dot and that's in Pear Deck also. So just, thinking about using some of those simpler slide types. And then Flip has been one of the best. So that one, actually, I would say our elementary educators love them. Love Flip because there's so many creative things that students can do. Like there's like these emojis, they can play with these backgrounds, and it just gets them more comfortable, like actually opening up on camera. So they can use these lenses to filter their face a little bit, and they can get a virtual background, and they have fun with it. So it just opens them up to get started talking, which can be a little bit of a barrier to entry sometimes, like getting them to open up and start talking. But those fun features make them get really into it. And then again, for the students, especially the real young ones who can't type yet, using Flip allows them to create a video and ask questions, or sorry, answer their questions through video. So they obviously they can't type yet. They can do that. So yeah, I think that one's probably Flip might be the one to explore first.
That was a fabulous answer. Folks, if you submitted a question and we didn't get to it, we will work to answer it and follow up with you. But before we end today, Stacy did a fabulous job of introducing Wacom and Wacom tablets. But I did also want to let you know that with some of our Wacom products for education, the One by Wacom, Wacom One, and the Intuos, those do come with 90-day trials for several of the software and the apps that Stacy mentioned today and some others. And so it gives you a way to try some things. We also have two additional webinars coming up about with our partners at Pear Deck and with Cami. And the information is here, and you can also find that on the Wacom website. And I know we're running just about at time here, but you can begin to see all the different ways folks are using Wacom technologies in education, both online, in person, remote, blended, hybrid, every kind of model of instruction you can imagine. And you can find all of this information also on the Wacom education site. But again, these are the 3 devices that are compatible with PC, Mac, and Chromebook, and that helps all of us who are working in classrooms. This information will be available in the slides that are available in the resource section from EdWeb. We will not be emailing slides around to everybody, but you can get them. You can get them from the resource section at EdWeb. I want to thank you all for attending today, and especially warm thanks to Stacy. It was a fabulous presentation as usual, and we hope you all have a warm, healthy, happy, peaceful Thanksgiving. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.